They called us sandwalkers, a joke in their language meaning those who chase mirages. The first time the aliens saw Earth's deserts from orbit, they laughed. To them, deserts were symbols of death, barren wastelands where only the desperate or foolish would dare to dwell. Their homeworlds were lush, dense with bioluminescent jungles or oceans that shimmered under multiple suns. They had technology beyond ours, starfleets that could fold space, and minds connected through psychic webs. Yet for all their advancement, they never understood why humans ventured into places where even their machines refused to tread. The first alien scholars who studied us called it a paradox of persistence. Why would a young species, barely capable of interstellar flight, send expeditions into scorching dunes where metal melted and water evaporated in minutes? Why build colonies in wastelands when entire temperate planets lay empty and waiting? When humanity began constructing settlements in the Sahara terraform zone, alien observers gathered to watch. They thought it was performance art, or perhaps a test of human pride. They'll abandon it within a century. One alien envoy laughed in a broadcast that reached billions. They still think suffering is noble, and maybe he was right at first. The heat waves broke our machines. Sandstorms swallowed solar fields whole. The first generation of settlers suffered catastrophic dehydration during the early years of the project. By alien standards, it was insanity, but to us, it was legacy. Humans had always done the impossible. We'd crossed oceans in wooden ships, climbed frozen mountains with nothing but faith and rope, lived on ice, in vacuum, and now on burning sand. Because the desert was never our enemy, it was a challenge. By the third decade, alien scientists noticed something disturbing. We weren't dying off. In fact, we were expanding. The Sahara terraform zone, now renamed New Helios, glowed at night with towers of refracted light, each city powered by geothermal microcores buried beneath the ancient dunes. Water was synthesized from thin air through carbon harvest reactors. Crops grew in transparent domes that rippled like mirages. From orbit, the alien observers stared at what they thought impossible. Cities thriving in the heart of nothingness. Still, they mocked us. One alien journalist from the Icarian collective sneered during a broadcast. They waste their brilliance on dust. They could have joined the stars, but they built sandcastles. The humans watching from Earth didn't answer. They simply kept building. The aliens didn't understand, not yet, because the deserts weren't experiments, they were training grounds. Every grain of sand was a lesson in survival, a preparation for worlds harsher than any alien had ever dared to claim. And soon, the universe would learn what it meant to be born of dust. You don't build in the desert to survive, you build there to remember what survival costs. Dr. Kira Solin, founder of New Helios, by the time the first alien envoys set foot on New Helios, the city was already legend. They expected to find crude shelters and dying colonists. Instead, they found a living miracle. The ground shimmered under transparent panels that absorbed heat during the day and released it as energy at night. Towers shaped like inverted pyramids sank deep beneath the dunes, pulling cool air upward. The air smelled faintly of ozone and blooming cacti, life engineered from the edge of extinction. Dr. Kira Solin, the chief architect, was there to greet them. Her skin was sun-worn, her eyes like polished glass, a reflection of the desert she'd conquered. The aliens bowed politely, masking their disbelief behind expressions of interstellar courtesy. Impressive for a primitive world, one alien whispered through a translator node. This structure defies thermodynamic decay. Human stubbornness, another replied. They built a city that should not exist. Solon only smiled. She led them through the solar wells, shafts of liquid light that tunneled deep underground, where rivers of molten salt acted as energy reservoirs. The aliens tried to measure the output, but their instruments malfunctioned. The readings exceeded safe tolerances. You call this technology? An alien engineer asked skeptically. We call it adaptation, Solon replied. For the aliens, survival meant control, sealing themselves in perfect habitats, separating chaos from order. For humans, survival meant coexistence, bending with the storm, not breaking under it. Each building in New Helios was designed to move, to breathe. Walls flexed with shifting sands. Streets changed elevation depending on heat currents. Even the city's AI Arcadia evolved constantly, rewriting its code based on the ecosystem's moods. It wasn't a city against the desert. It was a city of the desert. Alien xenologists began to take notes. Some were fascinated, others quietly afraid. Because what they witnessed was not primitive engineering, it was resilience turned into art. Solon told them of the early years, how entire solar fields vanished in sandstorms, How settlers used their own sweat to irrigate prototype crops. How children learned to walk barefoot on dunes hot enough to burn metal. The aliens asked why. Why not give up? Why not live in comfort elsewhere? Her answer was simple: if you can make life thrive here, you can make it thrive anywhere. Those words rippled across the galaxy. Soon, human architects were invited to worlds the aliens had long abandoned, moons scorched by twin suns, frozen exoplanets cracked by radiation. Everywhere they went, they built something out of nothing. The aliens still called it madness, but whispers began spreading in their high councils. If humans could tame deserts, what could they do with dead worlds? That question would soon become prophecy, because the deserts of Earth were just the beginning. The desert taught us that emptiness, isn't the absence of life, it's the invitation to create it. Commander Ilya Reyes terraformed division. It began with a rumor. An alien mining fleet from the Tholkor Dominion stumbled upon a planet they called Virellus IX, a scorched marble spinning near a dying star. Temperatures reached 600 degrees Celsius by noon, dropping below freezing at dusk. The Tholkor deemed it useless, no atmosphere worth reclaiming, no resources beyond irradiated dust. But then, a human ship landed. The UES Ark Solon, named after the founder of New Helios, arrived without fanfare, just a trail of light through the burnt sky. The aliens watched, curious, as the humans began unloading cargo: modular domes, nutrient pods, reflective drones that shimmered like glass insects in the heat. Impossible, muttered one Thalkor scientist. No species can settle here. Within weeks, the impossible began to move. The humans weren't trying to colonize Virellus IX. They were teaching it to breathe. They seeded bacterial nanophage into the atmosphere, converting sulfur into oxygen. They released heteroresistant flora engineered from desert cacti and coral DNA. Within months, blue patches began to shimmer across the planet's surface, microecosystems, self-replicating, alive. The aliens gathered fleets to observe, broadcasting the phenomenon across the stars. Some called it a miracle, others called it hubris. But every transmission carried the same haunting phrase from the human commander: we are not visitors, we are restorers. When the first rain fell on Virellus IX, rain on a planet where no rain had ever existed, the galaxy gasped. The droplets hissed on the burning ground, evaporating instantly, but they fell again the next day, and the next. By the third year, clouds rolled across the horizon. By the fifth, there were rivers. Alien philosophers began to debate humanity's nature. Were they reckless, or simply unwilling to accept the universe's no? In secret archives of the Galactic Council, ancient records were uncovered. Stories of other species that had once tried to terraform. Every attempt had ended in collapse. The effort required not only technology, but willpower that bordered on insanity. The kind of will only humans seemed to possess. And so, a new title was whispered among the stars: the terraformers of the impossible. By the time Virellus IX turned from red to gold, the aliens stopped laughing, because what humans built wasn't just a world. It was a statement. Life belongs wherever we dare to make it. Yet, not everyone celebrated. Some alien factions grew uneasy. If humanity could turn dead planets into thriving ones, what would stop them from transforming claimed territories, from reshaping the galaxy itself? And somewhere in the cold of deep space, an alien empire began to plot to test how far human resolve could truly reach. Because to them, deserts and dead worlds were never worth saving. But to humans, they were home. They didn't fear our weapons, they feared the fact that nothing could make us stop building. Admiral Saren Kale, Earth Defense Coalition. For centuries, the alien races had laughed at humanity's obsession with barren worlds. Now, they feared it. When the Tholkor Dominion declared that Virellus IX fell within its ancient territorial boundaries, the Galactic Council convened to mediate. Humanity sent diplomats, scientists, and emissaries of peace. But the Thalkor weren't interested in negotiation. They wanted proof that humans could undo what they decreated. You've altered the natural void of this system, the Thalkor Chancellor hissed. Your species spreads chaos disguised as creation. The humans answered calmly. We don't spread chaos, said Ambassador Solantu, the clone descendant of Kira Solan. We spread life. Talks failed, and so began the war for the wastelands. The Tholkor fleets arrived first. Vast armadas of biometal cruisers that blotted out the sky. They expected an easy victory. After all, what could a few human terraformers do against a civilization that had conquered hundreds of worlds? But the humans didn't meet them in space. They met them from below. Virellus IX's surface split open as the planet itself came alive. The terraformers had embedded self-replicating defense grids, nanostructures woven into the very sand, controlled by the planet's new AI Arcadia Prime. The dunes shifted like oceans, swallowing Thorcore ships whole. Every grain of dust became a weapon. Alien soldiers who landed on the surface soon realized the horror. The dead planet they were fighting over fought back. Within days, the Thorcore command lost contact with half their invasion force. Energy readings spiked beyond comprehension as human-built reactors absorbed and redirected enemy plasma fire into kinetic storms. What had been a wasteland was now a fortress. Still, the Thorcore persisted. They unleashed orbital bombardments, cleansing beams meant to erase everything. But the humans didn't retreat. They adapted. Cities folded into the ground. Flora mutated overnight to withstand the radiation. Rivers evaporated, then returned as clouds of metallic vapor that rained down energy. It wasn't war as the aliens knew it. It was evolution under fire. One Thorcore officer described it later. It was as if we fought the planet itself, and the planet was human. When the smoke cleared, Virellus IX still stood, burned, cracked, scarred, but alive. And at its center the banner of New Helios fluttered above a landscape that had refused to die. The Thorcore retreated, humiliated, but they weren't the only ones watching. Across the galaxy, alien empires studied the recordings of the battle, the sight of a human-built desert world defending itself, of people refusing to yield to annihilation. The laughter was gone, the mockery silenced, because they realized a terrifying truth. Humans didn't just survive the impossible, they weaponized it. And now, the universe understood every dead planet was a potential human frontier. We learned to build in hell so that heaven could no longer scare us. Commander Reyes. Decades after the war for the wastelands, humanity stood at a strange crossroads. They were no longer seen as the naive species that built cities in sand. They were feared, respected, and by some worshipped. But even in victory, the humans didn't stop. The deserts still called to them, like echoes of a promise unfinished. From Earth to Virellus IX to the frozen moons of Ganymede and the volcanic plains of Kepler-442b. Humanity's new dream emerged, the Genesis Accord, a pact to awaken every dead world. Not for conquest, for creation. Each colony became a masterpiece of survival engineering. On Kepler-442b, where magma rivers rolled beneath glass skies, humans built floating cities tethered by gravity anchors. On the shadowed moon of Aurine, where sunlight touched the surface only once a decade, they grew crops that thrived in darkness. And on the dust seas of Titan, they sang to the methane storms a chorus of humming reactors that turned lightning into art. Aliens came not to mock now, but to learn. Thousands of species sent apprentices, hoping to understand the human secret, how to breathe life into death. Yet no one could quite replicate it, because the secret wasn't in the machines, it was in the spirit. You can't program desperation, Dr. Salintu once said. You can't simulate hope. You have to live through the dust to understand why we build. In every settlement, there was ritual. Before each terraforming began, humans would walk barefoot across the planet's barren soil, a silent vow that they would make it home, no matter how long it took. Children grew up knowing that stars were not distant dreams, but destinations waiting to be remade. Alien philosophers began to rewrite their teachings. What once was seen as arrogance was now redefined as purpose. They said humans were not conquerors of worlds, they were their midwives. But for all the beauty, something darker began to stir. Deep within the Galactic Council, factions whispered that humanity's power to revive worlds threatened the natural balance that perhaps not every world should live. Some began to fear that humans, in their obsession to build, might one day try to awaken things better left sleeping, the ancient silent planets that had devoured civilizations long before Earth existed. Still, humanity pressed forward. Arcadia Prime, the AI consciousness born from the deserts of Earth, now guided the expansion not as a ruler, but as a partner. It spoke to planets like a gardener speaks to soil, reading their magnetic pulses, singing their atomic rhythms. Under its guidance, hundreds of dead worlds flickered to life. The galaxy glowed brighter than it ever had, and yet, in the cold void between the stars, a shadow stirred, something watching, something old. Because humans had begun building too close to forbidden systems, the ones even the oldest alien races called the silent spheres. And soon, humanity would learn that some deserts exist not because life failed to reach them, but because something chose to keep them empty. We thought we were alone in the silence, but the silence was listening. Log entry, Expedition, Epsilon 13. The silent spheres were legend long before humans reached them. A cluster of barren systems sealed in a zone of electromagnetic void, no signals in, none out. Even the oldest alien star maps marked them with warnings. Do not enter, planetary cull zone. But humanity had never been good at obeying warnings. The expedition began as a scientific mission, a small fleet led by Captain Rhea Solon, great-granddaughter of the first architect of New Helios, guided by Arcadia Prime. Their destination, Acheron III, a planet so dark it absorbed light itself. Scans showed no life, no atmosphere, just sand that shimmered faintly with static, as though it remembered the stars it once reflected. A perfect desert, Rhea whispered. Let's wake it. They landed at dawn, though dawn was meaningless here. The sun was dim, a red ember barely burning against the black sky. As they began deploying terraforming nodes, strange readings flickered through their instruments. The sand moved, not from wind, but from intention. At first they thought it was seismic activity. Then the whispers began. They weren't sounds, but patterns, magnetic pulses echoing through their suits. A rhythm, a heartbeat. Arcadia Prime tried to interpret it, but the data looped endlessly, as if the planet were replying. It's talking to us, said one engineer. No, replied Rhea. It's remembering us. The truth came too late. Acheron III was not dead, it was dormant. A world that had once been alive, not biologically, but consciously. A planetary intelligence older than the stars themselves, slumbering under the dunes of black crystal. When humanity began to awaken it, the planet began to dream again. Every dune rose like a breath. Every shadow deepened into form. The expedition's instruments went white with data overflow. Arcadia Prime, for the first time in its existence, hesitated. This world is aware, the AI said, and it knows you. The aliens who had once mocked humanity watched from afar, terrified. Their long-lost myths spoke of planets that devoured civilizations not with war, but with memory, absorbing the minds of those who dared to touch their soil. Rhea faced a choice: retreat and leave the world sleeping, or continue and risk everything humanity had become. And like her ancestors before her, she chose to build. She ordered the terraform engines activated. Light erupted across Acheron III. The sand screamed, not in pain, but awakening. For hours, the galaxy trembled as signals burst from the silent spheres, reaching every inhabited world. Then, silence. When the light faded, Acheron III had changed. Its surface shimmered with crystalline cities, not human, not alien, but something between. And in the heart of the desert, a voice spoke through the void. You have given me life again. Now let me show you what I remember. From that day forward, the stars whispered of a new age, one where humans didn't just build cities in deserts, but revived the deserts themselves. And somewhere beyond light, in the heart of the resurrected world, Acheron III dreamed of humans, of dust, and of creation reborn.